As I reported to you almost 1 week ago, former Formula One and IndyCar champion Jaques Villeneuve appears to be set for a 2022 Daytona 500 run. Plus, iRacing has just purchased the creators of the NASCAR Heat Games and claims it's headed to consoles. We'll talk about the state of auto racing gaming as well. Let's get into it. So first off, I want to start off on a sad note here and send my condolences to the family and friends of former Indy 500 winning owner and former head of the Champ Car World Series, Kevin Kalkoven, who passed away today at the age of 77. Kalkoven was instrumental in being one of the guys who kind of brought IndyCar and Champ Car back together and fixed the split. So certainly not only an on-track legacy, but an off-track legacy in terms of IndyCar racing. So again, my deepest sympathies and condolences to his family. As I reported to you guys just before the New Year's, there was a very strong possibility that the Rion brothers, along with Hezeberg Motorsports, would enter former Formula One world champion, 1995 IndyCar and 1995 Indy 500 champion Jaques Villeneuve for the 2022 Daytona 500. And Bob Pockrass confirmed yesterday that the first steps in that process will be made next week. Pockrass reports that Jaques Villeneuve, who tested a Cup car at the Charlotte Road Course for Team Hezeberg, the number 27 Ford fielded with the Rion brothers, is scheduled to test for the team next week at Daytona. The team's Daytona 500 plan/2022 schedule, Loris Hazemans to do the road courses, still to be announced. Now, big topic of discussion on this channel over the last couple of weeks has been how the field is going to be filled, if the field is going to be filled for the 2022 Daytona 500. And as you can see on the screen right now, these are the cars I believe that will be able to fill the field if they all materialize, of course. Now, the 62 of Noah Gragson for Beard Oil Motorsports, that is already confirmed, as is the number 66 MBM car. However, again, a driver has not yet been named, but that car is expected to be at the Daytona 500. Jaques Villeneuve in the number 27 car, let me put it this way. If they're testing, it's very, very likely that they're going to run. There's no such thing as a random test anymore in racing, or it's a very rare thing that nothing materializes out of going to a test. The number 96, which is the Gaunt Brothers Racing car, they do own a next-gen chassis, and that puts them well ahead of most other people who may be kind of on your list, your personal list of who may or may not be able to show up for the Daytona 500. But again, as I'm aware, a month ago it was 50-50 and not really on the good side of that 50% possibility. Jaques Villeneuve last attempted to qualify for the Daytona 500 in 2008, but failed to make the show after a crash in his Gatorade Duel. But of course, with the possibility, the very strong possibility of a short field this year, or at least a straight filled field with nobody going home in the duels, he probably won't have that much of a worry if indeed they do enter the Daytona 500. Now, Villeneuve has made a Super Speedway Cup start. It was way back in 2007 at Talladega, where he completed all 500 miles and finished 21st. Now, there was some discussion yesterday. I don't know how serious it was, and again, it was from fans. Let me put it this way. NASCAR is going to approve Jaques Villeneuve if he does want to run the Daytona 500. His resume speaks for itself. Formula One world champion, IndyCar champion, Indy 500 winner. Okay, I get it. Maybe he doesn't have a ton of NASCAR Super Speedway experience. Does that really matter? Let me put it a different way. Would you turn away Scott Dixon or Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen or Helio Castroneves if they were like, hey, I would like to run the Daytona 500? Would they really say, no, you got to go run an ARCA race first, son? No. So Jaques Villeneuve, he'll be all right. And certainly if you're looking at people to fill the field, these are exactly the type of drivers you want. You don't necessarily, and again, I know that Derek Cope won the Daytona 500 30 years ago, He really shouldn't have been in the race last year. I think he proved that with a couple of mistakes. I don't think Villeneuve will quite do that, though. People have the meme about Villeneuve for wrecking, what was it, Danica at Road America one year, and everybody now thinks that Villeneuve is a dirty driver. I don't know. I seem to remember he was the clean one in the 1997 Formula One World Championship between him and Schumacher, though I suppose some people would say that isn't saying much. Here's the interesting thing, too, is that when Villeneuve tested at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and granted it was on a road course, of course, where Jaques Villeneuve would be much more accustomed to, they weren't exactly slow. So I begin to, kind of scratch my chin a little bit and think, wait a second. What happens if Villeneuve is actually not only in this race, but competitive in this race? And what happens if somehow, some way he was able to win the Daytona 500? Do we start having a conversation about Jaques Villeneuve having like a career resurgence? I don't know. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves there. He's got to enter the race first. And to do that, he's got to get through this test next week. Now, I'll be at that test. I'll be covering it. So I'll let you know how Jaques Villeneuve looks, or, if he does do what some of the haters are saying he'll do and crash the field. Well, that'll make for a good video, I suppose. But I think Villeneuve will be all right. And again, I think this is best case scenario if you can fill the 96 with a competent driver as well. And certainly I think Jaques Villeneuve is well above the competency level in terms of, the typical drivers who are, in 39th or 40th place, at least on the entry list. Major announcement today from iRacing. iRacing announced that they have purchased Monster Games, who formerly created the NASCAR Heat series of video games. The most famous and well-received was 2003's release called Dirt to Daytona. They currently create the game for the SRX series, and giving an opinion here, that game is a seriously underrated gem, and if you have not tried it yet and have any interest in it, you should. This is a key quote from the press release. President and owner of MGI, Monster Games, Rich Garcia will join the iRacing development team and be reunited with iRacing CEO and CTO Dave Kamer, who worked together at Kamer's former company, Papyrus Racing Games, where Garcia was instrumental in the early years of Papyrus in building the foundation for what iRacing has become today. Now, the other key point from that press release is that this new conglomeration between iRacing and Monster Games will be producing games for the console market. Now, does that mean it's absolutely iRacing coming to consoles, at least in the form that we know it now? I don't believe so. However, iRacing has been kind of secretly and sneakily, not really secretly, but kind of sneakily putting AI into iRacing. And they not only have iRacing for stock cars, they have iRacing for open wheel cars, they have AI for dirt cars, short track, road course, lots of stuff all of a sudden. Big tracks like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Daytona, both have AI in the game. You can race the AI cars there. So you start thinking to yourself and you go, hang on a second. With especially a lot of the licensing partnerships that iRacing already has, what kind of a game could they put onto the console market through Monster Games? That makes me scratch my head a little bit, because if you think about it, a lot of people are pointing out that, Motorsports Games has the exclusive license for NASCAR and IndyCar. Okay, officially, right, I think they're for the official games, though, right? Like, that doesn't apply to Forza Motorsport, right? You can still have NASCAR games in Forza Motorsport, or NASCAR cars in Forza Motorsport. You can have Indy cars in Forza Motorsport. So what's stopping Monster Games and iRacing from putting out a variety game? A game that you can race Indy cars and NASCAR and Formula One and all sorts of different things in one game on the consoles. I don't think there's anything. So, and then you, of course, get to the problem, which is motorsport games. And I'm not speaking out of school here. There's clearly some problems at the ranch, not just with the first game, but I think recently it was discovered, even though it came out, in the beginning of last year, that some of the stockholders have been suing motorsport games for varieties of reasons. It's been a bit of a mess. There's no doubt about it. And again, I think we'll have to really judge off the second game. I think the big situation with motorsport games for the first release is they clearly didn't have enough time to release that first NASCAR Ignition game. So if the second one is a stinker, then you start asking the question, how long can that company keep going? And then how long are they going to be able to, clutch onto the licenses they have if A, they can't get games out, or B, they're not able to produce any games because they're not financially able to do so because the sales are so bad. I don't know. I think there's some interesting things coming in the future the next couple of years, because there wouldn't, put it this way, iRacing would not be getting into this position if they did not plan to release games. And I don't think they're just going to be like, hey, we got SRX the game too, even though I think that's coming. I don't think that's their entire plan here. And that's going to be very interesting because, ironically enough, I've been playing some of the old Monster NASCAR games. We've got NASCAR Heat 2002 here, which is based on the 2001 NASCAR season. And this game is actually extremely underrated. I think it kind of gets overshadowed by Dirt to Daytona, rightfully so. But this thing is awesome. Like, I've been playing it. And it's funny because in a lot of ways, I kind of look at the Monster games of this era, which definitely have some Papyrus elements in there, which is kind of funny. They do feel a little bit like the older Papyrus games, not so much like NR 2003 or certainly iRacing, but these definitely feel like NASCAR 99, if you ever remember playing that. And this game, to me, like, if you know the Madden franchise of NFL, like NASCAR Thunder is like Madden, this is like 2K5. Actually, no, this isn't 2K5. This is 2K5. The problem with Monster Games is that they didn't have a lot of the licensing to really do the job that EA did. And really, in a lot of ways, the fact that they had two arms time behind their back meant that, to me, this is the best NASCAR console game of all time, and it's really not even close. And the only reason I think people hold the Thunder games in such high regard is specifically because they have like lightning challenges and thunder plates and hundreds of paint schemes, manufacturer challenges. Like, this game doesn't have any of that. This game has Beat the Heat and then the career mode, which is just one of the best career modes that's been in any game ever. But it doesn't have a lot of that window dressing, and in a lot of ways, unless you were a hardcore fan and were able to tell the difference between a good handling model and a bad handling model, you weren't going to ever notice this. I was lucky enough to have this game as a kid. This was my NASCAR game, so I really got spoiled. But if they're able to do something similar to Dirt to Daytona, or even just, this is the other thing too. I think in the internet age, this game would have a lot better chance of being successful against EA Sports than they did in 2003. I think word of mouth, I think YouTube, I think influencers would get behind this game much more so than an EA product, especially these days where there's such a focus on online. If Monster Games and iRacing, they come out with a single-player experience that has the physics, licensed tracks, licensed cars and teams that iRacing is capable of bringing in, I think you got a real winner. I think it's very interesting and exciting to see what the iRacing team ends up doing on the console side of things. So let me know what you think of any of this down in the comments section below. Welcome to 2022. Happy New Year. It's going to be a hell of a year on this channel. If you're not subscribed and you've gotten to this point, subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.